Hey everybody, Zian over here from Nintendo Life. Now, if there's two things that we love at Nintendo Life, it's number one, obviously video games, but number two, it's also digging up old memories. And in the spirit of Halloween, we thought that it'd be a ton of fun to go back and talk about the games that scared us the most when we were kids. And obviously when I say we, that means that I'm not entirely alone. I'm pretty sure there's somebody else here to chat with me. Oh, did you hear that? Please tell me that's picking up on the mic. Please tell me that that's here and that's not just me.
Zion.
John?
I was crushed by a video game show.
Is that you? Do I have to do this video alone now? John, please. I'm an adult now and I'm not supposed to be scared anymore. John, are you alive or is this Ghost John?
This is Ghost John. But Ghost John has similar opinions to Alive John, so he's around to talk.
You know what? I think that'll work.
Okay.
I think that'll work. We've been playing games since we were basically babies. I think the first game I ever played was bowling on Atari, and I think I've talked about that before. And surprisingly, somehow, that is not a game that actually scared me, even though looking back on it now, it probably should have, because it's not a beautiful game, to say the least.
Getting the heebie-jeebies over here just thinking about it.
Yeah, can you imagine going back and playing Atari bowling now in the year 2021 on a flat screen in 4K?
Here's a real horror thought for you, Zion.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine Atari bowling 4x3 stretched out to 16x9.
Ugh, I'm throwing up just thinking about it. There's a lot of games that we grew up with that I think scared me for reasons that they shouldn't have. But one in particular that definitely had every right to scare me was one that we rented from the local Piggly Wiggly, which is where I experienced a lot of Super Nintendo games. And we just walk in, that was the days of you walk in, you look at something on the shelf, you pick it up, you don't know enough about it, and you're just like, sure, that's fine. But it was Simpsons. I think it was Bart's Nightmare on Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember if it was the music or the fact that you hop into this. I think Bart's sucked through this portal. I think at the beginning there's a cutscene and he's falling and stuff. and then he's just on the streets. Maybe he's in front of his house or something. And there's monsters and zombies all over the place. And the music is terrifying. And I don't know if I picked that up off the shelf or if my mom did, but it had to be her. Because I think if I would have looked at that, I think I would have said, no, this is not the game for today. This is not for us. Because that's what I felt once we got home, we started playing it. Because I maybe played 5 minutes and then I was done. I'm not sure. Maybe my mom played more. Maybe she's going to watch this video and she'll text me later and let me know. But did you ever play any of the Simpsons games on Super Nintendo?
I played a bunch of Simpsons games, but not this one. And I'm actually kind of interested because The Simpsons isn't a major thing for you. Alex references The Simpsons a lot.
He does, yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think back then I wasn't really... Maybe it wasn't that I wasn't allowed to watch certain shows like that. I would watch, I'm blanking on that. Beavis and Butthead. I used to watch Beavis and Butthead with my mom, but then if my grandparents would come in and they would see us watching it together, they'd be like, turn that off. Zion can't be watching that. But maybe The Simpsons was the same way. I don't know. But yeah, somehow I never got into the show, but I've played so many of the games, bowling, even I loved the bowling game. Speaking of bowling again.
Yeah, you're a bowling champ.
I guess.
I played a lot of the PS2 era Simpsons games. I played The Simpsons Skateboarding, Road Rage, Hit and Run. None of them were particularly scary, but every Halloween I'd play The Simpsons Hit and Run, level 7 I think it is, where Springfield has just been taken over by zombies. And it's not scary, it's just your average Halloween themed area. So there's zombies, there's pumpkins, everything's at night, there's ghost cars going around. And yeah, it's not something that's going to make you go whoa! But it's just kind of neat and it gets you into the Halloween spirit. I think the title screen as well on Halloween gets changed a bit. Homer's sitting in a devil costume on the title screen. And I think Christmas Day does something too. That's neat. But yeah, I haven't really been scared by The Simpsons, but I am kind of interested in trying the Super Nintendo game now, though.
That's the thing I think we're going to discover a lot in this, at least I hope we uncover in this video, is that I think a lot of the things for me, at least, that I'm scared of are things that you should not be scared of. I have one horror game in my pile, and the rest of them are platformers and cartoon-colored games. So
I think I'm the same, actually.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. So, what's one that scared you, John?
So I feel like this is a pretty common pick, and it's Pokemon Gen 1. And I think everyone knows what we're talking about when we say red and blue and yellow. I think to explain it properly, though, we have to explain why Pokemon was so special to kids in the first place. Like, when I was a child, every year on my birthday, my mum would allow me to go further from my house. So when I was like 6, I could go to the top of my street. I couldn't go any further than that. But when I was 7, I could go, around the block. When I was 8, I can go to the park, or whatever like that. And so the world was gradually being opened up to me with my freedom. But Pokemon was this outlet that allowed me to explore beyond the boundaries that I could usually go to. It let you almost act like an adult. You can go around to different towns, you can explore, you can discover things yourself in a way that I couldn't when I was a kid in real life. And so it felt safe in a way, but also like you're breaking boundaries. And I don't think we're ever going to replicate that feeling with Pokemon. I think the first game you play when you're a kid is always going to be the one that feels the biggest. And so you get to Lavender Town, and everything up until now, where it seems safe, it seemed like a world that you can get lost in, suddenly gets turned on its head, because Pokemon can die. There is a building with dead bodies of Pokemon in there. Like, people go to mourn their lost partners. And then you get to the top of the tower, and there's just flat out the ghost of Marowak in there. And everything all of a sudden gets very real, and every random encounter in that place is an actual ghost that you can't fight. And I remember just being in there and not wanting to move on. I'd save my Game Boy, turn it off, come back the next day, make a bit of progress, like save again, come back. I didn't want to go further in this place. I'd only play like in bright daylight. I would never play at night.
I was just going to ask, too, if that was something... I mean, I guess if you were playing on a Game Boy Color, you would have been forced to play under a nightlight or something like that, which probably would have even been more horrifying at the fact that you could barely see the screen and the music is so horrific. And I wonder if that was part of the era as well, as that the Game Boy was limited in some regards, that the Game Boy, to us, I think, as kids, was already mysterious enough, like that you're able to just even go on this, like, epic journey inside of this handheld machine. And now you're talking about ghosts and death and things that we, like, little kids shouldn't be thinking about. Is just, that's not something that, I don't want to say it's something that kids shouldn't be exposed to, but they're not prepared for it at all. Like, doesn't Gary's, or green or blue, whatever you want to call him, his Rattata, doesn't it die? Or that's the theory, in that
Yes, and he's there to look out. He's there to mourn for it, and then it's no longer in his party in any upcoming battles.
That's right.
It's crazy. And you're totally, the music too, you're totally right. It's this very slow and scary theme. And as a child, I found it intimidating. As a teen, though, I got into like creepypastas about Lavender Town, and there were all these stories about people hearing the music and then like killing themselves or something. And
yeah.
It made it feel like more than just a childhood fear and more something that lingers. And I know it's probably nonsense, but even like returning to Lavender Town now, I'm like, I'll just turn the volume down a little bit. It's just something that stays with you.
Yeah.
And I know Pokemon's done ghosts in other games, like X and Y and Sun and Moon. They have ghosts in them, but I don't feel like anything's ever going to feel as organic as Lavender Town.
I wonder if I think it's in Pokemon X and Y. There's that like ghost girl that appears in the background of a or maybe does she appear once you go into the store, or maybe it's one of the scenes where like the camera turns and there's a character in a shot or something like that. Does that sound familiar?
You're totally right. Okay. Yeah, there's a building in the main hub city, and when you go out of a lift, she walks behind you, and there's no walking animation, just kind of slides out, and I think she says, "You're not the one I'm looking for," or something like that. And in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when you're in the Elite Four, she appears like right in the background.
Oh, okay,
okay. Just for a frame as the camera pans. But she's a recurring character in those games, and it's freaky. But I don't feel like it's the same level as Lavender Town, though.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the Pokemon Company just trying to instill like a tiny bit of fear in the youth again, without like going as hard as Lavender Town. Like, because I don't I haven't looked into it enough, and I feel like this could turn into its own entire video on its own. But I'm glad you brought up creepypasta, by the way, because that completely reminded me of one that I completely forgot about. Majora's Mask for me growing up was a fairly spooky game.
Ben drowned. Is that where we're going?
It is. We have to go there. We have to. Now you made me think about it, and so this was not me as a kid, but as a teenager, definitely. I think. Well, maybe I was 17 or 18 at this point, but still young enough, I suppose. And I was so scared. I remember my friend Tyler and I, we were, I think I found out about it, or maybe he did or something. And we were at his college dorm, and we were looking up YouTube videos all about it. And we read the story in the dark, but the videos they're so realistic, especially in comparison to the games. And I think this was at a time as well where maybe the modding community it didn't seem as easy to mod video games it wasn't as commonly accepted, maybe.
Especially for console games. Like PC games, absolutely.
Totally.
But there weren't things like Sonic.exe, and like we see these things now and we're just like, of course they're fake. But yeah, this Majora's Mask thing, this sort of story wasn't oversaturated. It kind of felt like it could be real.
Yeah. And I guess for anyone unaware too, if you are not a child and you have some courage, you should definitely go look up the Ben drowned story. It's very scary. I think some people might just laugh at it. Who knows? And maybe I shouldn't even be recommending that to people. I'm gonna leave all of this in the video, so that way make your own.
Halloween.
Make your own decision. Yeah. It's not real, right? Right, John? It's not. It can't be real, right?
No. It did change my perspective of those. What do we even call them? Statues when you play the song?
The Elegy of Emptiness statues, right?
Yeah. Whenever I see that Link one, I'm like, okay, keep moving.
Yeah, because to cover the story briefly, it's like this kid named the kid isn't named Ben, right? That's the name of the potentially grandchild, or someone else's name Ben, right? Not the main character here.
I can't recall the specifics,
okay.
But yeah, maybe.
But yeah, this kid goes to this garage sale and he finds, which is such like an us story, by the way. Like, I think maybe that's why I fell into it so hard, was because I was like, I could do this. This would happen to me. But this kid goes to this garage sale, finds a copy of Majora's Mask he buys it from this old man, or maybe the old man gives it to him for free. And I think the label is like messed up or something like that. And he gets home and plays it, and I think there's something about the save files are corrupted, or maybe he starts his own file and it gets corrupted and he starts it over and he finds this new save file named Ben or something like that. And then, there's lots of spooky stuff starts happening from then on. And we could talk about it more, but I'll shut my mouth now and cut it off there. But yeah, go check this out if you haven't. But yeah, I think it was a kind of a product of its time as well, as that, like you were saying, John, is that like if we watched a video like that now, maybe it wouldn't be as believable. But back then, it felt so real because there were so many different pieces that it just... And the story, I think, slowly was uncovered over time as well. Like, I think it was like one day this video was up, and then a few days later, another video came up. If you were following it in the moment that it was happening, it was kind of... The story wasn't all shared at once, so it was kind of like watching a TV show episode by episode. Like you got to think about what happened in the story now, and then the next day, or maybe the end of the weekend, a new part of Ben Drown was uploaded, and you got to speculate on it then, and be scared to go to sleep, But speaking of Zelda games, did Ocarina of Time get you growing up as well, John?
Totally. Yeah. For me, it was mostly the redeads. Like, whenever... Like, they're the enemies where they stand still. They're motionless. They just stand there doing nothing. And if you approach them, you just stop. You're petrified. And they slowly approach you and just grab you. They put their bodies around you and just start... What's even the word? Thrusting. They just start thrusting on you. And
they do, you're right.
And
they go, I'm just going to do it quick, but they go, don't they? Or is that the like...
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they do.
And they scream beforehand, too. Like, they instill fear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're terrifying. And, they're fairly easy to take down. Like, if you just sort of stab them once or twice, they're gone. But it's just that intimidation factor. Whenever they're on screen, I just want to get past them as soon as possible. Obviously, there's also the Underneath the Well, which has, like, blood everywhere, and it feels like a dungeon. I know Zelda has lots of dungeons in there already, but it feels like an actual dungeon.
I think I've suppressed the memories from Underneath the Well, because I've definitely done it in Ocarina of Time 3D, and I replayed Ocarina of Time maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and but I don't remember any of it. And I did not play it as a kid. My mom and I, we would play Ocarina of Time together and Majora's Mask. And when it came time to go to the Shadow Temple and the well, I definitely passed the controller to Mom and was like, nope, this is your turn now.
Do you remember the big white blobby creature with the long neck?
Only from
Does that
images.
ring any bells?
I've only seen it in pictures, I think, because it's kind of like a ghostly figure, right? But it doesn't have legs, doesn't it? Kind of like slugs around on the ground, and it has long arms and a long neck, right? Okay. I don't know how it interacts with you. What did it do?
So I'm trying to recall myself. I'm playing through it again right now on N64 online.
Oh, sweet.
I've just become an adult, so I'm getting to that bit there soon. But if my memory serves me right, I think its neck extends, and I'm pretty sure it just sort of grabs you with its teeth. That might not be right, but from my memories, I think it literally just sort of snaps its neck and grabs you like that. And yeah, so there's definitely some dark moments in this game.
And that's a good point too, by the way, is that. So I think, especially when we're kids too, we might look at something and think it's way scarier than it actually is. Especially with you, like maybe this spooky creature is not as horrifying as as you're painting it to be. I mean, it definitely graphically on the outside it is. Every aspect of that, you had every right to be scared, because I think I did that a lot growing up. For some reason, one of my cousins had Luigi's Mansion, and that was always like a big blank spot for me growing up, or even just over the years. Was I never played Luigi's Mansion, and I never really had any interest in it growing up either. And I'm assuming it must have been for the fact that I was too scared to play it as a kid, that I just pushed it out of my potential pool of games to play, or maybe I never found it.
There are some scary moments. There's one. I remember one part where there's a baby. Do you remember the baby ghost? And it's like in a crib, and it's like rock. And I think maybe I'm mixing memories here, but I'm pretty sure
that does sound familiar.
There's a baby's playroom with a ghost in there.
Okay.
And I remember being intimidated by that.
It has looking back on it, I maybe I'm being too hard on myself. I've always been afraid of ghosts, monsters, anything like that. I was just out immediately. But with just like the somewhat cartoonish nature, I look back on it now and I'm like, I should have played Luigi's Mansion a long time ago. Like, my cousin was younger than me and he was playing it just fine. What was wrong with me? He would bring it over to my grandma's and we would watch him play it, and but I just noped out of that really quick.
I have an interesting history with ghosts, and this is off topic of games. We're just getting into horror in general.
Oh, that's fine.
My sister, when she was 6 years old, she was describing a Victorian lady sitting on her bed, and that's quite an imagination for a young girl to describe. Like, she was describing this very old dress. The lady was just looking there very sorrowful.
Do you know how old your sister would have been when she?
She was around 6 then, and
okay.
I think I must have been 2. My other sister was 4, I think. But yeah, my parents like retelling that story, and my dad's very firm against there being no such thing as ghosts. My mum, on the other hand, is on the opposite side. But there was one memory they had where they were in a field together, and they heard marching, and then they researched what this area was, and it was a war zone back in World War II. And even my dad recalls the marching, and he's still firmly against ghosts. He's trying to find a way to describe how he could hear those sounds. So personally speaking, I've not really had a ghostly encounter.
Same.
My childhood home is Victorian, and whenever I was sleeping at night, I'd hear all these sounds, and I would just sort of say to myself, "Oh, it's the pipes, it's this or whatever," but I could still hear them every night. And part of me did think "Hey, what if there's a ghost lounging around?" One day my dog was just barking at a wall. I was like, what's going on here? Why are you just silly? Or is there a ghost?
Do you think any of these spooky vibes that you had throughout your childhood then amplified any of your video game potential fears as well? Or do you think it made you more prepared? Or have you really thought about that too much?
I think that's kind of what made me take the Ben Drown thing seriously. I thought that maybe there was potential that this really could be cursed. Yeah, I mean, I think as the years have gone on, I've become less of a believer. But I wouldn't downright say there's no such thing as ghosts.
It's really tough when you're in a position like that where you haven't encountered anything yourself, because my girlfriend, for example, definitely believes in them and has had a few experiences herself. But here I haven't had any experiences, and so I sit on this weird fence as well, where it's well, yes, I believe you, and I do believe the people that this has happened to, but it's so hard. It's tough because if you haven't seen it yourself, you just have to go off of the word of everybody else, right? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know where I sit. But
Yeah.
I am the kind of person, though, that will, even as an adult, like I was playing Resident Evil Village recently, and I did the extra spooky part in the middle of the game, which I like. I so much, if anyone hasn't played Village yet, which I imagine lots of people that are listening to this Nintendo discussion, they probably have not played Village, Resident Evil Village. Just try to go in no spoilers because there's some really cool stuff in there. But that, I was playing it when Fallon would go to work at night, and so I would walk upstairs to our bed and go to bed by myself with like no nightlights or anything. And I'm an adult, I'm okay, but I'd be lying to you if I told you that I wasn't scared to go to bed.
I had this same experience with Resident Evil 7. I adore the series. I played every entry, but 7 suddenly turned up the fear factor in a way the series hasn't done, I'd say, ever. It's probably the scariest one, alongside Village as well. And whenever I was alone in the house and it was dark, I was like, I've got to turn the light on, because I know that Jack Baker is he's just lounging around the corner waiting to bring me to the family.
that game's so interesting too, which I guess we could talk about that one more, because you can play the cloud version if you live in Japan on Switch.
Yeah, sure.
But so Fallon and I, we replayed that game recently because I played it on launch, and then we replayed it again so that way she could watch it, because I really wanted to play Village with her. And so we played it together, and she there were times where I was like, oh, Jack isn't gonna come out this part. He won't. No, we beat him here. I mean, he'll come back. I didn't tell her he'll come back eventually, but I was like, no, he's not gonna come into this room or whatever. And that was not true. I was wrong. He ended up like completely busting down this door and following us into this area. Like, I was still scared of being like alone and scared of the dark in that game, and the different monsters, and like grandma appearing, in her wheelchair out of nowhere and stuff. But I was still happy that the game was still able to scare me even after I thought I already knew everything about the game, I think, or like I thought I knew what was coming.
That's the best kind of horror, the unpredictability of it all. Like, a lot of horror films, they'll build up tension. Like, someone's gonna like reach for a door handle, very slowly turn it. There's nothing there. Like, they're building up the suspense until the big reveal's gonna happen. And with Resident Evil, the first one in particular, they build up suspense with zombies and everything, like the first zombie turning its head and slowly coming towards you. But for me, the scariest part of Resident Evil 1 is that one hallway that you walk down, and it's empty, like there's nothing there. And you're probably used to sprinting by now, so you're sprinting down this hallway, and suddenly, the game breaks its rules. The windows shatter, and out come dogs. They jump through the windows and start chasing you through the hallway. And that part scared me so much, and I was probably a kid when I played this game for the first time. That scared me a lot. Just these dogs rushing towards you in an empty, silent room. And then the remake came along on GameCube, and that same scene is there. Apart from the windows the dogs don't jump out the windows. There's like a little crack noise, and the dogs don't come. And so you'll suspect, this event's going to happen at some point. So you're waiting for these dogs, but that event's just completely turned on its head, and there's nothing there. And so you got to go way further until the dogs arrive, and that feeling of tension it's really palpable.
That's interesting that they managed to carry that feeling forward into the remake as well, because like you said, you were expecting it, and then it didn't happen, and so now you have this new fear of like knowing what potentially could come, and now you're just dreading it the whole time.
Yeah.
What was your first Resident Evil game?
My first was Code Veronica on the Dreamcast.
Wow.
So I was a Dreamcast kid, and my mum was very against like mature stuff. She didn't want me playing scary games. And I was like, hey, it's just zombies. It's not like it's ghosts or anything. And somehow that convinced her. So she let me play Code Veronica. And I liked it a lot. My second one was then Resident Evil 2 on GameCube, and then eventually went to 4. And then I nosedived into the series and played everything after that. Code Veronica's not a crazy scary game, but when you're a kid, I think it is. Pretty much any horror game is when you're a kid. A friend and my friend's dad had a PlayStation 1, and he had a few games. Like, he had Silent Hill, he had Parasite Eve, and so we tried Parasite Eve 2, yeah. And like Parasite Eve 2 isn't the most well-regarded game in the series. I think the first one is. But we got to the point where it's fairly close to the beginning, and there's this shop, and in there is this dead person, and their head slowly turns off and drops on the ground. And we just turned off the PlayStation. We're like, no, this is forbidden. We should never touch this ever again.
You were telling me about this too. I think a few days ago. Weren't you saying something too that like you weren't supposed to be playing this game as well? Like, did you sneak away?
We were hiding the PlayStation upstairs, making sure no one knew we were on it.
That's great. So when I was a kid, we borrowed a PlayStation from my cousin Marcel, and I love dropping the names in there, even though no one in the community has any idea who these people are. But if my family's listening,
I know Marcel.
Yeah. I love if my family's listening, maybe they'll hear it. But so yeah, Marcel, or maybe it was Marcel and Nick. But anyways, they let us borrow their PlayStation and all their games, and they had Parasite Eve in there. They had Resident Evil 1, and I think 2 or 3 was in there as well. And they had a couple other kind of not scary games, but they had some other games that were... Oh, they had Diablo. And I remember looking at the cover and just being like, I'm never going to play that. Never. But so my mom really got into Parasite Eve, and I watched her play it every so often, but she ended up getting stuck. I never could play Parasite Eve myself either because I was too afraid, but I loved the intro track. And even like years later, I'll still go back and look it up because it's such a good piano beat. Yeah, we had Resident Evil, and I was too scared to play it. I don't even think my mom played it either. Maybe she didn't like the controls, or I don't know what. But I didn't have any memories of that on PS1. But at some point, or somehow in like 7th grade, I had the courage or the desire to rent Resident Evil 4. And I don't know what led me to do that, because I was probably 12, maybe 13. My mom let me rent it on the GameCube from our local shop, and I got to the point very, very quickly where you have to fight I feel like there's a correct name for him, and hopefully you know this, but the person that has the chainsaw, does he have a name?
He does have a name, and it's not on my mind right now. I think it's Dr. something.
Oh, Dr. Salvador?
I don't know. Oh, hang on. Yeah, localization. Dr. Salvador. Yeah.
It is. Wow,
that's a good memory.
Thanks. I don't know why I remembered that. It's probably because of the Resident Evil 4 custom video that I made back in the day that I showed you, right, John?
Oh, that's amazing.
The video that no one will ever see. But yeah, I made it to that part with the chainsaw guy, and I just was like, nope. And I remember putting it down and going to school the next day and talking with some kids, and I think somebody told me that you could find a shotgun in one of the rooms. And so then I had the courage to go back in, and I got the shotgun, and I made progress, but he completely halted my experience. I was done with that game at that point. If I didn't have someone tell me that there was another way to progress, I would have noped out. And eventually I bought it on PS2 and played through it only with the help of the fact that I was with family and like had a person sitting on the couch next to me while I played, you know? But yeah, I think that was the game that finally got me to get into scary games, though. Just to accept that the fear was sometimes fun and not always as scary as I thought, I guess. But
yeah, it can enhance the experience. 'Cause you're totally right. I think that's kind of the game that got me into horror too. And people like going back, people say like Resident Evil 4 isn't a scary game, and I think that's maybe partially true. But it is a tense one, and I think I played through most of it myself for the first time on a sleepover. So I had someone with me there the entire time, kind of laughing along and sort of making fun of the scary aspects. But even to this day, like, I feel like I've mastered Resident Evil 4, and that I know it inside and out. I know what's around every turn. I know where enemies are going to spawn, and that like feeling like you've overcome horror and like you know everything that it's going to offer is a good feeling. It's kind of cozy in a way, like that you feel like you can actually overcome something that's so treacherous. And like the opening to Resident Evil 4 is the scariest part of the game. Like you have this onslaught of villagers, you're underpowered, you've only got a pistol, and out comes a chainsaw guy. Like how are you going to overcome that? And you're right, if you go into that house and find the shotgun, you can make easy work of him. But if you don't do that, then you're kind of...
that like if you lose to him, he just like cuts your head off as well. It's the most horrifying thing. Or it could be to some people, or especially to a kid too.
Yeah, and he doesn't play by the rules of the other characters too. Like Resident Evil 4 is a game about sacrificing movement for shooting, and all the other characters will sort of hobble towards you when they're close, but they'll run from a distance. But this chainsaw guy, he's always on the move. and it's very intimidating. And like 4 does have other scary moments. Like near the end, there's a guy who runs out of an oven randomly and just sort of chases you on fire. And then there's the regenerators. You know, they have scary sort of like that kind of noise. But I feel like nothing really touches that village moment though. I'll change the tone a little bit. It's technically Nintendo. It's been on a few Nintendo consoles. Rayman 2. So
I need to hear this.
Rayman 2 isn't a scary game. It is a weird one though. And there's one part, I think it's like midway through the game. There's like this Mike Wazowski kind of character, like this big green orb with no legs.
Mike Wazowski!
He basically follows you throughout the entire level, and it climaxes in this chase scene, and it's done by the perspective of his mouth. So his teeth are on the borders of the screen, and you just have like these sharp teeth on the vertical axes of the top and the bottom of the screen, and you're sliding down, and if he gets close enough, he'll just eat you. And so it's this very weird and deliberate change of tone for this kid's game. And yeah, as a kid, I was terrified of this segment. And this is the kind of game I've replayed over and over again, but whenever I got to this part of the game, I was like, oh god, not Mike Wazowski.
Back then, maybe the ESRB was more loose with their restrictions on things, but I wonder if kids' games these days, or even just platformers, have horrific moments like this. You know, like I played New Super Lucky's Tale recently, and it has a ghostly area, but in that game, there weren't ever any moments where I felt fearful at all, you know? But I wonder if there's kids these days that will play something like that, and they'll, like, are kids going to have horrific memories about games these days? Kind of like what we had with Rayman 2 back then, you know?
Do you think, you know Mario Odyssey in the Seaside Kingdom, those eels, they're from Mario 64, but they remade them in excruciating detail with sharp teeth and scales?
Oh my gosh.
Will kids find them scary? I think I found that eel scary in Mario 64. I think it just sort of, it was like this invincible creature that swam around and had like a little star behind it, but I think I found it quite scary.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I forgot. How did I forget that they did this? Yeah.
Yeah. So in Odyssey, when I played Odyssey, I was like, oh wow, neat. It didn't scare me. I was just like, whoa, look what they did to it. But do you think kids will find that scary?
Is it wrong to say I hope so? I want you to feel what we felt. I don't know though. If anyone has any experiences in the comments, you know, please let us know below of your kids playing games, and it would be great to hear that kind of thing too. But I don't know. It is really cool to see that they brought that back to life though too. I mean, we have a lot of memories for things like this, but I think at the end of the day, they're just video games, and even if we were scared, it's we remember these things now, and I think that's something that, like, you know, we hold very close to us too. You know, like I know I've brought this up before in the past, but games like Sonic Adventure, when I was a kid, I was never able to play the Tails sections of the games, even though Tails was my favorite character. But the fact that you had to race against Sonic and that he was way faster than you, and I mean, you could fly and you could use the warp things, but he would beat me all the time, and it crushed me. I could not lose. I was afraid to race against Sonic, so whenever I played as Tails, I would just fly around in the adventure like fields or whatever instead, because I was too afraid to progress and actually do any of the levels. Even in, like, I was thinking about this the other day too when I was looking at my games, even Jet Grind Radio. I loved riding around and like spraying graffiti on things, but when the police came out to take me down, I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't.
You fear the police.
Yeah, I was afraid of the police in the game.
That's great. Fear is such a powerful emotion. I don't play horror games I don't play just pure horror games that much. You won't catch me playing Manhunt or Condemned or anything like that on my own. But horror moments in not scary games, or not intentionally scary games, are powerful. Like when you think about the ghost house in Mario 64, you probably think about that piano, and that piano it's not like a prominent part of the level. You just walk past it and it moves. That's it. Then you go on to the next room. But somehow that one moment of this piano coming to life and chasing you, basically, like it basically describes the entire level for me. Like, if you say the piano in Mario 64, I know what you're talking about. It's just some dumb piano that moves.
So it sounds like what we're saying is that platformers and cutesy little games need to keep incorporating little, it doesn't need to be Ben Drowned level of horror, but it sounds like people need to keep putting little scary things in their games to keep us kids on our toes.
Yeah, Splatoon's got some good stuff, actually. When you defeat a boss, sometimes you hear their screams, or the screams of people from the world above sometimes. Like, you hear, like, actual noises of trains going by.
Really?
Which, it's weird, because in Splatoon's lore, humans are gone. You know, it's post-apocalyptic world for them. But sometimes you can still hear the mournful sound of humans.
Is this in both Splatoon 1 and 2?
I think so. Yeah, I think in some boss chambers in both games, I'm pretty sure you can hear some screams.
I really should have played. I played a lot of Splatoon 2 handheld. I guess I should have been playing with headphones, so I could have heard that. So as being a dad now, obviously your daughter is not old enough to really play games beyond Peppa Pig, and when I say play, I mean just watch. Does she have review code yet? Have we gotten her that yet? Is she on the review?
We're still waiting on it.
Okay.
Still waiting on PR for that one.
Okay. Hopefully they get her onto that soon, because she needs to crank out that 1,000-word review soon.
Yeah.
Everyone's waiting. Playing video games and knowing, like, you know, that there's scary parts in them and stuff. Have you taken time to think about kind of like if you would restrict her from playing spooky games, or even just like knowing that certain games, maybe not the Zeldas and the Mario, but knowing that some games are spookier than others, do you think that you would try to limit her or restrict her in that regard, or do you have any? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this either, so please.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I feel like I don't want to just put my own experiences on my daughter. I want her to experience new things that weren't necessarily just my childhood again. But in hindsight, knowing what's in a lot of these games, I think there's a balance. Because when I was a kid, my sister who was like 6 years older than me, she watched The Ring, and like with her friends, and I watched it with them, and I was not ready. I was not ready to watch The Ring. And I had a little CRT in my room.
I think that's important, is not ready. That's a great way of putting it.
I had a little CRT in my room, and every night I'll turn it around, because I didn't like the screen facing me. And I would sit there in the covers, like wide awake, sweating, just watching this TV, being like, no sleep tonight. And that would go on for years. So I know that when you're young,
years!
just yeah, I'm talking like 2 or 3 years.
Oh
I know when you're young,
that
you can be very impressionable to horror. So yeah, you gotta have a balance, not too much. I think a little bit of fear is important, and it's part of the experience. So things like a scary level in a platformer, something you overcome, I think can make character. But succumbing a child to an actual horror game, I don't think so. But yeah, I think I'd be cool with her playing Rayman 2. And beating Mike Wazowski. I think I'm okay with that.
Well, dang, John, I don't think you should be afraid of your CRT thing. I think that's totally acceptable. I think if I would,
I'm okay with CRTs now. I feel like CRTs are important. I'll embrace them now.
Yeah, I love CRTs.
I don't walk into like a used electronics store. I don't walk in and just start weeping. I'm okay with them now.
All right, well,
CRTs are absolutely scarier than flat screens, though. Like, there's something about them. A flat screen, that's just a screen. A CRT, you don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
Why is it so deep?
Flat screens don't even make sounds either. Like you go to channel 3 and it's just mute. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
nothing scary about that.
I turn on this little CRT behind me here, and it makes the loudest like. But I feel like we've talked. We could keep talking. I have a big stack of games in front of me here as well that I still have not talked about, and I imagine John could keep pulling them out of his brain all day if he wanted. But we should probably cut it off at this point. So of course, anybody in the comments, let us know if there was a particular game, or if you have any memories that you recall from back in the day that absolutely terrified you, or if you're somehow a kid right now, or a teenager that made it all the way to the end of this video, let us know something that scared you recently. I would love to hear about this, and maybe it would give us some reason to go back and play some of these games. Of course, and if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more discussions and things like this, let us know down below. And why don't you go ahead and try and scare that subscribe button with a spooky memory of your own, and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we put up a new video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, John, for coming along for this discussion. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.
Hey everyone, this is John on the splash screen. I don't think Yoshi's Crafted World is a great game, but there was one level that I do remember, and it's this sort of horror-themed level with sort of searchlights and everything. And I remember that, and I think it's pretty good, and that's all I think about when I think of that game.
Was it a scary moment for you?
It was alright. I think a kid would find it scary.